donning my robe and my wizard hat, along with my podcast partner here. It's V'ger Please, Haven Voyage to the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
I'm Peter.
Boy, oh boy, Peter, this is a very synergistic episode for you and I. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, so robe and wizard hat, not your knee-high jack boots and whatever the wing pants are that the Nazis wore.
That Hugo Boss look, man. So sharp, yet so evil.
Yeah. Been a while, man. Good to hear you.
Yeah, so good to hear you too. It won't feel like it's been a while for our viewers. I think we probably only missed 1 week of Thanksgiving, and that was because I was ill. But we had a backlog that I guess we've worked our way through, and now we're kind of like riding the edge again. You're gonna have to build up more episodes, but no interruption for our viewers because what are we watching this week?
Season 4, episode 18, Killing Game Part 1.
So, loyal viewer, listener of V'ger Please, that you are out there in internet land.
You about to shame us? You're about to shame us, aren't you?
I'm going to, yeah. You've heard through the years now, Peter and I allude to a shared hobby that we met through, that Peter and I met through, that we became friends through, that we actually did an original podcast about years and years and years ago.
Everybody who's a good listener, take your headphones off and just turn the radio off for the next 10 minutes, please. I beg
Peter
you.
Peter and I are LARPers.
Oh.
Well, in my case, I was a LARPer. I was unceremoniously kicked out of my former LARPing club. That is a very long story. But for a long time, that was our primary hobby. And of course, we were so into it, we did a podcast about that hobby and that group. That was very popular, that group. I think it had more listeners than this podcast actually has now. And wouldn't you know it, things have come full circle. And here we are doing a Star Trek podcast about people LARPing and taking it way too far. And I fucking love this episode. I loved it not just for that synergy, but it's like a great Trek premise, a great sci-fi premise. It was fun and wacky as hell. And it does that rare Trek thing of not telling you too much and instead giving you like the cool shit instead. I enjoyed every second of this, and it is not just because I felt like at any time someone could bust out a little baggie and start throwing, little packets at someone yelling lightning bolt, but it was a great episode of Star Trek.
I did not enjoy it so much.
What?
I'm sick and tired. Spoiler alert. I'm sick and tired of World War II.
Oh, come on, man.
I am, man. Like Saving Private Ryan and like all that other stuff. Like this is a very 90s episode, and I think they really came in under, like I said, the Saving Private Ryan resurgence of World War II movies. And it's just,
I think that was after this though, like significantly, wasn't it? A couple years. I think Saving Private Ryan came out in like 1999, didn't it?
You search that, and I will tell you that Killing Game came out in 1998, so it's the same cluster. Maybe Private Ryan didn't launch this episode, but there was a very heavy concentration of World War II material right at the tail end of the 90s.
Okay,
and
so it also came out in 1998.
There you go.
Although I will say that it appears that came out in July 1998. This came out in March, so this was first. So it was before all of that stuff was really, like resurgent in the mainstream. It's clearly before all the video game related World War II media. Like I think Call of Duty and Medal of Honor and all those games didn't make an appearance until after Saving Private Ryan.
But at the end of the day, here we are after all of that, and it's a dead horse that's been beaten. And I think there's a lot of cool stuff in this episode, but the meat and the potatoes of it is a World War II story. I just could not find myself giving shits about it. But we start this episode off with something very different than World War II. we see a female Klingon, and she's kicking ass. She's got 2 other Klingon goons trying to kill her in a very familiar cave.
Yes,
Beholden
Planet Hell Cave. We've got a very made up Kate Mulgrew / Catherine Janeway with a near mechlith versus 2 Klingons with batliths.
I didn't even realize it was Janeway at first. I was like, oh, this is different. Here's a Klingon woman. Obviously, this is some sort of holodeck adventure. There wouldn't be Klingons just chilling out in the Delta Quadrant. And obviously, it's the holodeck because this lady just took a batleth to the chest full force and it did nothing. So I don't know if batleths are supposed to be dull and with pointy parts, or if I don't know if they're slashing or piercing weapons, to use a more common vernacular.
Can we point out for the record that the batleth may be the worst designed and least practical melee weapon ever created in science fiction?
Oh, I don't know about that. There's got to be something.
It's like really cool looking, and then you see how they're used in battle, and you're like, really, that seems terrible. It seems awkward and clumsy and very difficult to implement in a way that'll actually kill someone. I've always thought that the batleth was dumb, and I loved that, particularly in DS9, Worf transitions to using the mechlith, which is just like, a wicked looking sword almost exclusively. It's much, much better.
Well, she seems to do pretty well for herself. She takes the 2 guys off, and then all of a sudden, we see a Hirogen show up. He's talking some mad shit. She's like, come get some, and he ends up shanking her. And as she goes down, he pulls out a Starfleet comm badge, calls into sickbay, and says that he's got a medical emergency and that Janeway needs to be patched up.
So, a great detail of this episode is that we are never told exactly what has happened. We actually spend most of the episode just seeing the effects of what has occurred and are left to infer what happened. There's I would say around the 2/3 mark of essentially a recitation of facts, but not any details. But what has occurred and what we see is that the Hirogen have showed up. They have run some kind of unspecified off-camera hot dick all over Voyager and have taken over the entire craft. They own it. Which, considering everything that we have seen over the last 4 or 5 episodes, makes perfect sense.
Very well deserved.
Very, very well deserved. It goes all the way back to Message in a Bottle, and they're like hijacked the communication array and like shocked them, and then they blew up the communication array, and then sucked a bunch of their ships into a black hole, and then fucked them over the Space Mewtwo, and then didn't get new weapons to fight them with because of the unfortunate adventures of 7 of 9 in the episode we didn't review. Like, here they are. Here's the consequences of all of these actions. The Hirogen showed up and just ran hot dick all over them, and now they own the ship.
I don't think we've ever really taken the Hirogen serious. I know that during especially Prey, we do have some discussions, though, that the Hirogen really are kind of the antithesis of the Federation. Maybe not to such a colossal degree as the Borg, but you have this very, very technologically advanced society with no higher ideals or philanthropic pursuits, no prime directive, that they are using the full might of their technological superiority to sport kill, torture, and enslave. And despite the Federation, Janeway's best efforts to try to play nice, and we're going to save this guy's life, and all the normal Federation stuff, they just don't care. And I don't think that, again, the crew of Voyagers ever really looked at these guys. I mean, these dudes are fucking terrible. We thought that having a brain fart, super plague phage guys, the Vidians,
right?
They were real nasty with the Vidians, but at least at the end of the day, the Vidians were doing vile ass shit because their faces were falling off and their entire society had been debased and dilapidated by a terrible plague, right? The Hirogen they're decadent. I get, they're evil for the sport of it, not out of necessity.
They've evolved to being like this, and they never explain why. Like, we got the explanation of why the Vidians are organ thieves and awful. We never get the explanation of why the Hirogen have wound up like this. There is a reason. It's just thousands of years in the past, and none of the Hirogen know what it is anymore.
And to that point, neither does Voyager. And again, I don't think that Voyager really classifies them as the moral and physical threat to them that they should have. And there's been plenty of opportunities. I guess it all boils down to a question of this big battle where the Hirogen show up and one up Voyager to the point where they board the ship and, as we'll find out, have enslaved the entire crew population. Like, do you think Janeway attempted to play the self-destruct angle?
I would assume that, given Janeway's predilection for trying to blow the ship up when this kind of danger occurs, that she probably tried. We have seen in their prior encounters with the Hirogen that they are technologically superior. They're better fighters, and that they likely overcame the ship by boarding action and therefore was able to disable the self-destruct in some fashion.
We know canonically that they put people in acid baths and slowly dissolve them. Like, Janeway knows damn well what she's dealing with. Losing your crew to this kind of captors seems really out of place for her. And I want to jump back to what you were saying before. Like, this is a super torture camp that Voyager has turned into, as we'll find out. Like, crew is being maimed and killed and brought near death over and over and over again and propped back up so they could go back into these murder simulators over and over and over again. And look at the reasons why it's happened. Like you just talked about, like, it really boils down in the end to the Hirogen saying, give us species 8472 or we're going to declare war on you and you're going to find no peace. And everybody, especially, well, maybe not everybody, but, 7 to 9's like, listen, just hand this fucking terrible creature over that you allied with the Borg with. Like, that's how bad species 84 was, that you allied with the Borg. Just hand it over to these fucking hunters and be done with it. And Janeway's like, no, I've got morals. And she has brought this fate. She has dragged this fate to her crew, picked it up and thrown it on them while they were sleeping.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, if only the show was self-aware enough in its writing that they concluded that information at some point. Like, they seem to be wanting to draw that line, but I think we both know that was not their intention. Their intention was not for Janeway to be seen as incompetent and having somehow in some strange way deserved to have accidentally gotten her crew locked into a horrific torture chamber. But that's I think a valid interpretation of the facts, and particularly because we just kind of got off doing Prey. Was the last episode we did a full episode on, and in that we were essentially dumbstruck at the idea that Janeway would in any way consider not turning this species 8472 over to the Hirogen, given how much she was hard in the paint to just kill the shit out of them with the Borg as a means to an end. But of course, that isn't what they intended. What they intended to do was paint Janeway as this consummate diplomat, always trying to find a way to negotiate and all of that. Unfortunately, she is negotiating with people who are space Nazis, and the writers wanted to draw that parallel so much they put them in SS uniforms. That's not a joke.
There's been a lot of people we've called space Nazis. We've called the Borg space Nazis. We've called the Vidian space Nazis. The Hirogen have settled the matter. The Hirogen are now officially space Nazis, and the only space Nazis because, like you just said, they're wearing the goddamn uniforms.
Well, the Vidians were like Nazis in that classic, just they're evil, and Nazi is essentially a synonym for that. The Borg, I think, were always just space cyborgs out to just murder everybody. They're beyond Nazi. The Hirogen actually have that whole master race thing. I don't want to spoil too much, but like literally one of the holodeck Nazis in part 2 convinces one of the Hirogen of a whole bunch of Nazi propaganda. Like, they go real hard at that comparison. And it's, of course, as we'll find out as the episode goes on, the Alpha Hirogen, I believe is named Carr, he is essentially not murdered all of the crew because he's got this sense that, you know, like the Hirogen aren't going to be able to survive as the way that they are permanently, and that they need to come to a new way to like satisfy their urge to hunt, but while still being able to build their society again and all that. But the rest of the Hirogen are like master race motherfuckers. They straight up are. But that's not my favorite part of the episode, Peter.
Oh no.
Oh no. My favorite part of the episode is how the Hirogen get like all manifest different LARPer tropes from this point forward. That's where the true joy lies. Because what we find out is that, you know, they've built these super holodecks, right? They've enslaved the engineering crew led by a no fucks to give Harry Kim. Probably my favorite Harry Kim performance ever, aside from the shoot.
I mean, that was my real takeaway out of this episode by the end too. Is you don't get a lot of time with Harry, but I found what was going on in the ship outside of the holodeck infinitely more interesting than what was happening on the holodeck itself.
It was the most take charge, kick ass, fuck you Harry Kim has ever been ever. And Harry Kim has had to escape from a cougar planet where they're trying to sex him to death. Harry Kim has attempted to escape from an impenetrable prison that tries to drive you insane. And this is still the moment where he's like, oh, go fuck yourself. You giant alien with your fucking Mr. Freeze Ray. Go ahead and fucking shoot me. I'll give no fucks whatsoever. You know, I loved it.
Behind the curtain, it's hilarious that you're saying this, because on the Memory Alpha, and I want to point out, you know, I read all the Memory Alpha entries for these things. Like, the deeper we've gotten into Voyager, the more and more meager the Memory Alpha information has been. It's like, I don't know if the people who do the wikis for this thing just kind of are losing their steam as they go along, or if there's just not enough interesting information out there or source material to write on. But they've gotten thin. In this episode in particular, there is a lot of info out there.
Oh yeah, it's a treasure trove.
And both the writing staff was just kind of like, yeah, we didn't care about Harry, and you know, we needed somebody outside the holodeck, and it ended up being him, and we didn't care about him. And then Garrett Wang himself is like, I feel like I really missed out on a critical episode, and I'm stank that I didn't get it beyond there. It's like, again, I thought all the holodeck stuff was just kind of trite and stupid. And like, the real story going on here is the skeleton crew leading the struggle on the outside. And I absolutely agree. This is the best performance we've seen out of Garrett Wang. This is the most mileage that Harry Kim has ever had to cover as a character in the show, period. And for him not to really be cognizant of that was a real surprise.
Regardless, they used him well, and his limited screen time conveys a lot. So that was well done. But the next these super holodecks now have these 24-hour simulations where the crew have mind jackers in them, so that they think that they're characters in the simulation, which is some fucked up like space horror shit if I've ever heard anything, because it essentially strips them of their personality, sort of, but also, you know, prevents them from forming memories. So they're characters in these simulations, but those characters reflect what their personalities are. It's neat how they reflect that.
I love it.
The one they pick as of course the framing device of this episode we've already mentioned is a World War II simulation about a idyllic French town where the crew members are all members of the French resistance, and the Hirogen are the actual literal Nazis dressed in their SS uniforms. And everything about the resistance characters is all like tropes to the max. I love that Janeway is like the Humphrey Bogart with his like Casablanca style like bar, dressed in like this white tux. She looked like $1 million. 7 of 9 is the lounge singer. And that was actually apparently Jerry Ryan singing pretty good singer for someone who doesn't sing.
Yeah, it was a perfect reason to have her on screen for what felt like about 5 minutes singing in a low-cut dress while they focused on her chest. It was excellent framing on behalf of the writers. You really snuck it in well this time, guys.
Yeah, I will say that this is the first time that gratuitous let's show off Jerry Ryan's body shot didn't feel as gratuitous because it fit the setting that they decided to go with. The sets look great. Like the sets that they built for the idyllic French town were extremely detailed. The costumes look great.
Again, I mean that's not. I didn't read the entire wiki for it because it was so big, but like I'm sure this is just like backlot shit they had laying around, especially before Saving Private Ryan. I wouldn't be surprised if parts of this weren't reused in some of the other World War II movies. Like,
that could be. I mean, it's all Paramount, right?
It's just stuff laying around, Nazi costumes laying around, World War II era towns they had laying around, and now we're telling the Star Trek story in it. There's a level of Star Trek that I understand can only exist in comic books, video games, and novels because it is so fantastic and so extreme sci-fi that the budget just cannot exist in a television show for it. Instead of another World War II story, what if the framing device on this was like some Earth World War III setting, or first contact war with the Romulans, or any of the other.
I get your objection. I do. But at the same time, I love World War II shit, so that doesn't bother me. I will eat this up anytime someone wants to give it to me. And then 2, it connects with the audience in a way, right? Because it plays into war movie tropes and things that you don't know. So like when you see it on screen, you appreciate it more rather than it's like another sci-fi premise. As Deep Trek nerds, I get where you're going of like, oh, it would have been cool to see this thing, this other piece of like lore / history, rather than this thing I've seen before. But I like, what they did for what it is. And they executed it really well. You have to admit they executed it really well. Not just the production design, but like all of the characters, like all of the actors played their characters, but were also playing their normal characters as those characters. They got that line just right. And you felt it out, even though they never told you that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Like Katrine was a lot like Janeway, but was definitely a little different, that sort of thing.
Janeway, Seven, and Tuvok all had their underlying traits expressed through speech, if nothing else. You touched on it before, and I thought one of the coolest parts of this episode were the implants. So again, the interesting part of the Hirogen is that they are this super advanced master race, right? That got so big that they were spanning in the entire quadrant.
I have 2 quadrants. It went all the way. The communication array went all the way to the Alpha Quadrant.
Right. The best guns, the best ships, their medical technology seems to be like super advanced. They've got all this going for it, and all they do is just abuse the technology and bully smaller species. And they're such a shadow of whatever their former greatness used to be. I really enjoy them having like this crazy hypertech and just using it for the most shallow of reasons. And like you said, the implants that they're putting in people that allow them to basically turn into NPCs on the holodeck, like what a really cool concept that was. Again, I can't really say that I enjoyed the World War II framework of the episode, but everything else from a sci-fi angle, really cool. And I like when Star Trek is able to present a piece of technology that seems very fantastic yet completely plausible. A piece of wetware that is going to fool you into playing the part perfectly, and the memory blocks and everything else, and just a pure living hell if it were to be abused by people like the Hirogen.
And the idea that they were this race that fell from grace, no one knows why, they don't know why, but they have this leftover technology that they don't like understand, but they like know how to use for this limited purpose. Like the communications array itself that is 10,000 years old. right? So they're this decayed remain of something great, and they have this technology that they're able to use to exert their superiority in limited fashion. But as the alpha himself says, like, eventually this is gonna stop and we're all gonna be gone. We're gonna all die. And a
I
race
don't
won't
know.
live anymore because attrition's finally gonna fucking get us.
I liked his character a lot, and I liked his speech and his motivations. I'll be interested to see in the second episode what he's really about. Like,
Right.
is there a merciful element to him? Because certainly, if we were to look at everything that we know about the Hirogen up to this point, and all of the transgressions that Voyager has gone out of its way to inflict on the Hirogen and really just antagonize the hell out of them, like, yeah, you would think if they were able to board the ship that everybody would have been dipped in an acid bath by now and their bones would be hanging from Hirogen haunted house ship interiors. But instead, it seems like the majority of the crew has been spared, or not spared, has not been killed and is alive and functioning in these holodecks. So is this car guy extremely vindictive, and he knows that Voyager's been stunting on him on the Hirogen hard, and he's like, I'm going to torture these guys? Or is he kind of like this figure like oh, what the hell was his name, the Kremen scientist who was
Anorax.
Anorax? Is he like Anorax, that like he's lost, like he's evil and he doesn't realize that he's evil? Like,
Yeah, this guy seemed much more like he had kind of an idea of what he was about,
well,
and it wasn't that he was evil for evil's sake, or he figured, he at least figured out, like, man, my race is not going to survive like this. These Federation jabronis, they certainly got this cool holodeck shit that we don't have. Maybe this is a way to like circumvent or like build a new, like,
murder
he's not a
masturbation.
good guy by any stretch of the imagination, but he is definitely like got some forward thinking.
Well, only having seen the first part of this two-parter, like I said, he could either be pure evil and he is intentionally trapping these people in repetitive death hell. He could be secretly merciful. Like, it seems like he's got some pretty advanced ideas, and like, maybe you don't really need to kill people. Maybe we don't need to be mass murdering, marauding monsters of the Delta Quadrant. We can just kill hologram people, and that could be enough. Or it could just be like he presents it to his subordinates, pure research, and that he wants the crew still alive so he can continue to explore this species to its full potential and basically take the good ideas and leave the bad stuff behind so he can try to grow the race. Because I think his real fear, if I took his speech the right way, wasn't that the Hirogen wouldn't be able to survive, that eventually they're going to kill everything around them and then they'll have nothing left, and that they need to move beyond simple murder pleasures.
I got the impression his fear was the more they murder everything in their immediate vicinity, the further out they're going to spread. And that is what's going to kill them, is that they'll eventually, just because of attrition and being solitary and being too far apart, will die. And that this is a way to bring everyone together, is this way to like get the hunt impulse out, and then like, oh, okay, we're all here, we're getting that out of our system, and now we can have a society again because we're all in the same place, and can rebuild that. That seemed to be what I was thinking he was saying. I don't think he has any like impulse of like not murder. I think it's much more pragmatic, but I do like what he did with Kathy's office. He strung up all his murder
Boopiness.
nets. He's got his extra weapons on the walls. It's got
Lots
his
of them
bones,
too, yeah.
his bonesies.
I wonder
It's
if
good.
he's picked up an odd desire to have soup, if that's like a trait that the Ready Room bestows upon you.
Or coffee. You never know. So we got away from my favorite part of the episode. We went on a tangent. So when the Hirogen show up in the World War II simulation, Carr is into it, right? Carr is he doesn't want his immersion broken. Like, this is what Stevie says. Like, he's that LARPer. He wants everyone to stay IC, right? Everyone's got to stay in character.
Man after my own heart.
Like, no one breaks character. Like, everybody, if you're in the LARP, You're inhabiting the LARP. No breaking immersion. He's that
If you're
guy.
in the in-character area in the holodeck, you better be
Yeah.
acting in character. If you want to go be out of character, go to the mess hall, go to the landing bay, the shuttle bay, go to engineering. There's plenty of places to go be OOC, but god damn it, here you're in character.
The other like two Hirogen characters are not immersion LARPers. Okay. You got the one guy who's, I guess we call him the second in command, he's the metagamer. Okay. So he doesn't want to be actually like playing the game for the sake of the simulation. He just wants to win as quickly as possible and move on because he just wants to murder everybody.
Yeah, it's not a metagamer then. He's just a power gamer.
No, he's a metagamer because he purposefully attacks the Voyager crew in the simulation without cause because he knows they have to be critical characters. That's metagaming. That is absolutely metagaming. He sees Neelix and he's like, oh, I'm going to stop Neelix because I know Neelix is a dude. And therefore, Neelix's character has to be important in some way.
How are you this wrong on it? Like, that guy is just a power gamer who's down on some PvP, and he just wants to get his chopped on, all right? If he was a metagamer, if he was a true cheater, he'd either have magic penciled like 622 points onto his sheet and like have a bazooka and a phaser.
Right. Some thaumaturgy, maybe. You never know.
Or he would have went into the source code or read the script on it and been like, oh, this is where they're meeting for their secret resistance meetings, and I'm just going to show up with a boot party out of nowhere and roll these fools, or just directly confront Janeway and say, I know you're the rebel leader, and I'm going to drag you in. Like, that's metagaming. And you know damn well the difference between these two. I'm surprised I have to correct you on this, Joe. You've been out for too long. Banning, getting banned has just rotted your
It's immediately all this knowledge just left my brain. I think you're right. I think I'm going to amend my statement.
I'm right. I've spent decades accusing people of these things.
You're right. This is not a metagamer. This is a power gamer because he purposely does the worst thing, but within the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Point noted. Mm-hmm. My apologies. He did not add 600 points to his sheet so that he could, suddenly just like drop a thaumaturgy bomb on Neelix or whatever of some kind. No, he played by the rules. He just isn't into his character, right? Like he's got like a background. It's probably like a paragraph long, if that, or maybe never even came up with one. He's just like Bob the fucking Bruja, He's just like whatever.
My parents died, and I studied karate, and I also am a gun ninja because I watched Equilibrium. Like,
his name is back on Blackblade. He dual wields katanas. He bought Potence and Celerity right away.
If he was a metagamer, when he jumped Neelix out in the street and Neelix was like, what do you got there? And he'd be like, oh, just the essentials of life. He'd be like, why don't you peel the label off of that wine bottle and show it to me? And Neelix would be like, you motherfucker, you cheater.
Call the storyteller.
You only know that because you're friends with the game master. You read the campaign module. I remember when I was in, junior high, my buddy was running a Palladium campaign, and by campaign I mean the first time we played, when we spent the whole day making our sheets and then we sat down to play.
As you do with every tabletop, every first session is just making a character, and it's if you can get through that, this is the game actually happen.
It was terrible. Nobody was really having fun. My friend Colin got up to go. He was the game master. He got up to go pee or something, and Jim, my buddy, just picks up the book, just picks up the fucking like campaign module, starts reading it. Colin comes back in and he's like, all right, so what do you guys do? And he's like, I go back 2 rooms and I check the rock in the back left corner and I see if there's a key there. It's like the most blatant fucking thing. And my friend gets like furious and everybody's just kind of like, Jim, you're a real asshole, but man, none of us really, like, no one here wants to play anymore. So we didn't win. We didn't lose. Like, you just really pissed the GM off who's been trying to run this goddamn game, and it's over. So, like, I guess the ends justify the means. Like, we're done, but
we're free. We're free.
Some real egregious shit here. That's metagaming. And that's what that
I
guy would have done to Neelix, I think. Instead, he was just like, hey, listen, man, I got a gun. You don't got a gun. I fucking hate space cats. So you're going to get a nice trip to sick bay, and lit his ass up.
Yeah, so there's a shootout, and then Seven of Nine's character shows up and shoots back, and then they both just get shot. Apparently, Seven of Nine almost gets shot in the head. There's a fun moment where he's like, "Avoid the cranium, like don't shoot him in the head. We can't use him again later."
So big picture here, and this is what I think is really cool. Like you said, the engineering crew, led by Harry Kim, is keeping the ship functional. Everybody else is pushed into this holodeck murder, meat grinder. And the doctor is like running around the clock trying to triage people so no one dies so they can go back in. And we haven't really discussed Voyager bingo, and I don't have my bingo card close by, but this really brings up like a hard point. Like, at what point does the doctor's software say, like, am I saving this patient's life, or am I just sending people back in to be accosted and harmed more until eventually everybody is going to die anyways? The doctor gets some.
They say this has gone on for almost 3 weeks. It was 19 days that it's basically just been murder simulator after murder simulator, where they're like patching up like these traumatic injuries that the crew members are getting over and over and over again.
There's another Hirogen medic or doctor or something also kind of keeping an eye on what the EMH is doing, and helping out here and there, and doing so poorly as he's like just making things worse in some case. I guess I'd make a bigger deal out of like, should the doctor be playing along with this game, or just letting people die, or doing something to end their suffering, except for the fact this is ship invasion number 4 or 5 for him. Like, at this point, he has been around the block several times. He knows his way around an invasion. And I would say it makes sense for him to keep people alive as best he can, because he knows, something is going to happen to tip the favor to the humans.
Yeah, I mean, he's a veteran. He knows there's a way to deal with this, and eventually some of the crew members are going to enlist him as their Che Guevara and, help take the ship back, which is exactly what happens.
Switch over to...
say, we forgot about one of the characters in the simulation.
B'Elanna.
B'Elanna. So, in my favorite, just little cherry on top, B'Elanna's character is a French woman who is pregnant, so that B'Elanna Torres can be so that Roxanne Dawson can be pregnant on screen, and then it's okay. But specifically, her character is pregnant by a Nazi, like some SS captain. So she's sleeping with the enemy. Now she's doing it for the resistance, but like she got knocked up on accident as part of it, and these 2 French women come by on one scene when she's like going into Nazi headquarters to like scout it out as part of the simulation.
In the German version of this episode, one of the 2 women on the street offends B'Elanna Torres by saying Nazi Flittchen, which is Nazi slut. Whereas in the original version, the woman says Collabo, Nazi collaborator, in French, before spitting in front of Torres.
So you brought up the exact thing I was going to bring up. B'Elanna Torres in this episode is, by the production itself, a Nazi slut. So here we are again, poor B'Elanna being the sexual object.
Do you think her baby bump is a holographic augmentation?
I mean, in canon for this episode, it is, yes.
You don't think it's like some sort of prosthetic that got added outside the holodeck?
No, I think that it's probably a force field situation.
So let's play what if, like, if you can be a lady and have a holographic baby bump put on you. I mean, they really downplay the fun of the holodeck. Be like, fuck it, I want to be the Hulk. Make me 8 feet tall and a big green guy, and I'm just going to rampage through a fucking city. Or make me Shaft, or make me something drastically different than what I actually look like. And again, TV constraints for budget and whatnot, but like, what a device, what a wonderful toy that holodeck would be to have in real world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in canon, the holodecks probably perfectly capable of superhero fantasy. I would imagine that if they had more competent Trek on screen right now in an era that had holodecks, that was, not going to be Picard, which is going to be, I think terrible. You'd probably see that, and I guess they kind of hinted that stuff in the Orville.
Yeah. Um, the other part about B'Elanna is her wig, and I thought seeing her hair done up like that, and like the hairline and the prosthetic piece on her face, and like again, I think having her hair up lets her do a little bit more facial acting, and that was kind of a really cool change up to see her with a period appropriate hairdo instead of the standard B'Elanna haircut.
I did. I liked it too.
So back to Harry Kim, who is running this beat up and abused engineering staff. Part of Carr's plan is he wants to continue exploring the potential ability of the holodeck to facilitate whatever his plan is for his species, for the Hirogen. And to that end, he has been ordering the Starfleet personnel outside the holodeck to expand the borders of the holodeck. And this is where I think the episode is really cool, because we've talked a lot about like, why, if you've got the power of the holodeck, why have parts of the ship that are anything but holodeck? Make every deck holodeck, and it can be a bedroom right now, and then in 5 minutes it can be a mess hall, and then it can be a duty station or rec center or a cargo bay or whatever you need. Why have anything real? Just make it all holodeck. And that's basically what he's doing, where they're just knocking down walls and floors and just making instead of a holodeck, like a hollow cavern. And at one point Harry Kim's like, listen, I can't go any further in this. And there's a cool part of, I think, continuity error, because he's like, holodecks require tremendous amounts of power. Taking any more power to the holodecks would mean costing critical ships systems. And like early in season 1, I think the first or second episode of Voyager, we find out that the holodecks, which are completely luxury items, are allowed to exist while Voyager's in this emergency circumstance, because whatever they run on is a power signature unique to only the holodecks that is completely incompatible with the rest of the system. So they will allow this pleasure luxury item to continue operating, because there's nothing else that you would be able to do with this power currency.
They explain enough of like what it's doing to the ship and how disastrous this retrofitting is to satisfy that. So in that respect, I kind of like where they kind of left that discussion. I don't need a ton of detail as to why this is becoming more and more untenable or difficult to do. They establish enough of that for me.
Carr's response to that is keep pushing, making the holodeck bigger, and I'm going to hook you up with some like better.
Yeah, we get some extra like bootleg batteries so that you can push it even further. But
I know the answer, but I'll be curious to see if the Hirogen tech they're now acquiring to make these holodecks better is going to be something like Voyager gets to add to the war chest for the effort to get home in the end.
Oh, they do something interesting at the end of all this. It may not be what you expect. So the work of Harry Kim to do this notwithstanding, he's clearly got an eye on trying to free all of his friends. And he eventually enlists the Doctor in a plan to disable the neural
interfaces
devices that all of the crew members that are in the simulations are forced to wear. And they immediately hit on the fact that probably the first person we should do this to is the Borg lady, since she's already a cyborg, and she'll probably be the person we have the best opportunity of remotely disabling it.
She also has the most experience being able to break the fantasy and see reality. This is like the third time she's been used in this capacity. At least when there was the space elf Dr. Mengelas that were experimenting. And the Doctor adjusted her optic sensor to be able to see him, and I don't remember what she tried to. She tried to pull some shit in engineering, and Tuvok got the phaser on her, but this is old hat for her as well at this point.
Yeah, she She is always ready to be the MacGuffin, the technological MacGuffin for the episode. But at least they don't harp on it too much. They're just, okay, well, let's start with the cyborg lady and work our way down.
You know what I thought the neural interfaces really reminded me of in the end? And do you remember Batman, the animated series, The Mad Hatter?
Yes. Yes, the Hatter cards.
The
Yes.
Hatter cards he put on people, and it forced them to play a role. That was a really strong parallel for me in that, and that's again a simple technology, but a scary technology.
So uh, eventually the doctor is able to communicate with Seven briefly while the Hirogen minder is away and explain, like, here's a very brief explanation of what happened. This has been going on for 19 days. We got a plan. This is what's going to happen. You're going to get in back into the simulation. Then suddenly you're going to like be out of it, but you're going to still be in there and you're going to have to wing it on playing along until you can get to an interface within the holodeck that's going to allow for us to start turning off some of these neural interfaces. Specifically, they want to turn off the captain's first. And she agrees. The discussion they have is very no nonsense and quick. I appreciated that scene that the two of them have. They're kind of whispering, and the doctor's just kind of laying out the facts the way that the Che Guevara esque secret agent he is.
He's
giving
like,
his orders. Like,
let's see.
you're just gonna have to do this. Like, sorry, work it out.
Forgive me for a second. It's been 2 days since we've been boarded. Let me consult my emergency enemy forces invasion flow chart here. Yes, right. To train my pawn. A big part of the story, too, is with the expansion of the holodeck, installing holo emitter sensors throughout the ship at large. And this is what allows Harry Kim to summon the doctor out into hallways so they can start laying the groundwork for this plan. I find it funny that the holo emitters, which have been attempted previously, and not Kim and B'Elanna and Kim together were not able to get this thing up and running. The last time I think they tried to do it was back in the Dream Hell. Kesko's Super Saiyan and throws acid on the guy's face. Evil Q-like entity that, it was all a hallucination. Remember?
No, I remember that. Oh, God.
Persistence of vision.
Is that the one where Kess, like, basically has to use her psychic powers to just, like, crush him, and then he just is like, I just did it because I'm a fucking asshole. Goodbye.
Yeah. Fuck you. I'll be back later, motherfuckers. One of the many terrors of the Delta Quadrant. Yeah, it's the one that starts off with Janeway on the holodeck with her bodice ripper. Mom's in the attic, thinking she's going crazy because she sees the teacup from her holo novel on the and again, I think they did a good job of misdirection the episode, being like, oh no, it's just a glitch. The new holo emitters they installed everywhere are fucking up. They scrapped that whole project, and yet here Kim is, and he gets the whole system up and running great. But they've got these holo emitters set up out in the hallways in other parts of the ship, which I think is probably going to pay off later on the second episode when like holodeck characters start spilling out into the wild. But like, again, the doctor, as he's trying to prep 7 and 9 on this, like, we know what a holodeck character can do when they get pissed off from the aliens episode. You can just reach into someone's chest and burst their heart. All the stuff we already talked about during the message in a bottle episode when he's on the ship with Andy Dick. Like, Doctor, you can kill a lot of people if you want. If you've got free access to roam the hallways and go buck wild, like, you know what you have to do, dude. Just go T-1000, turn your hands into knives, and get going.
I like the idea of him like just running down the hallway with the knife for hands, just killing Hirogen left and right. But
again, or even with his fucking holo emitter, man. Like, as we saw at the second part of Future's End, which is when Voyager goes back to Earth with Captain Caveman to go fight Ed Begley Jr. Shuttlecraft crashes, and I think it's Chakotay and Tuvok, or I think it was, yeah, Chakotay gets stuck by the like rape hillbillies, and then Tuvok rescues him with the EMH, and They give the EMH a phaser, and he just like one-man Terminators the entire Freeman camp of psychobillies, and rolls up on Chakotay like, "Oh, hello, I'm here, I'm fine," and everybody shot at me, and I'm just a terrible ghost with energy weapons. Like, he is well within his ability to fight back.
And if they had a line of dialogue where they're like, they've basically threatened to kill a bunch of the crew that they have in lock and key if I do that, if I attempt to like actively try and free everyone or something like that, there would be an explanation for why he doesn't terminate people, but they just don't,
Here's the explanation
the
you need, is that the Doctor enjoys this shit. He enjoys being the colonel to some solid snake of some sorts. Pulling the
it's
string.
his fetish. He's like, yes, take over the ship so I can find a member of the crew and turn him into a hard ass that murders people.
Tuvok likes strangling Neelix. Harry Kim likes whatever necro fetish he's into. I forget what our end decision was on that. Like, these people got their kinks. Gosh, I get, the missed opportunity here is that they picked the World War II scenario. Oh, God. Had they picked the
Battle of Wolf 359.
Well, no, I want to talk about the
next one they want to do.
Well, what I wanted to say was the coworker murder simulator that Seska and Tuvok made. We could have gotten Seska out working with the Hirogen. Another escape opportunity. God damn it, so good.
Oh, by the way, here's a obligatory mention. This is a space jail episode.
We haven't played the sound effect in a long time, man. It makes me sad. You got to keep that thing queued up. That is the number one trope. So yeah, there's this big monologue that Carr has. We talked about it already, where he's got a doubting Thomas subordinate, like, basically like, you're off your rocker. We should have killed these guys and moved on. You're like edging all of us. We've all got blue balls. We just want to kill these people, take our trophies, and get the fuck out of here. Instead, you got us killing holograms and like, dry humping it. Like, let us move on. He's like, no, I got these grandiose plans. We need to get the band back together and rebuild our empire. And we can't do that if we're chasing every little fucking field mouse out to the far corners of the galaxy. And then he says, once we finish up this World War II plan, we're going to go after this other bloodbath called Wolf 359. And he pulls up schematics of the Borg, and there's no indication one way or the other if the Hirogen know what the Borg are.
I'm surprised. Like, I would have thought for sure the Hirogen might know about the Borg. I think we heard earlier, I don't know if it was in the episode directly after Message in a Bottle or Prey, where 7 of 9 didn't know anything about the Hirogen.
Good point.
So I guess, like, we know the Borg didn't know about them. I suppose that does stand to reason that would definitely go both ways. I guess I just presumed, due to how much they travel, they would have heard of them from someone, but they're not much for talking. So if someone had heard about it, they probably just murdered them and then boiled them into a stew. So yeah, okay, no, that checks out. Now that I talked through that.
Okay, so we got plot holes now. Like, let's do some Delta Quadrant geography real quick. In the middle of, I'm not even in the middle, at the beginning of Borg territory, we had the species 8472 incident, which results in the end with Kess going Super Saiyan, transcending into demigod, and flinging Voyager 10 years ahead on its voyage, which puts them significantly outside of Borg space, right?
Right.
So I guess there's a geographic buffer there that gives reason for the Hirogen not to have direct contact. And we could also say maybe when they're in trans warp, the Borg aren't aware of their surroundings or something. Because I would have to think if they found the Hirogen, that'd really be a jackpot of like baller ass technology to assimilate, especially that communication.
Or just like really cool drones, right? Like, oh, check out these big show motherfuckers. Let's let's get them into some cyborg implants and have them out there, man. More than these dudes, the merrier.
Take the threat that 8472 was supposed to be, and it's someone who could outgun the Borg. I think the Hirogen really would have been a better substitute for that that bad guy, cool guy status than boring ass space insects from fluidic space. But whatever. It was a cool illusion and interesting to think about. Like, how could anybody not know what the Borg is in the Delta Quadrant? And yeah, like you said, I think eating people before they had a chance to tell you anything is a great reason. Although, again, we're seeing discrepancies. Like in the earlier Hirogen episodes, they didn't really seem interested in talking. The other sentient species were like insects to them, and they just merrily moved along. But then you got this car guy that's like, and his little coterie of people like, no, you need to fully understand and study and know your enemy and assume nothing to be the best hunter, because as soon as you think you're better for no specific reason and you discredit your prey, then you become weak and you die.
So the episode ends with the Americans showing up in the simulation. We finally get to see Tom and Chakotay at this juncture. This is where they show up because they're the American GIs, and they staged the simulated attack on Nazi headquarters.
It's important to note real quick that all of the safeguards are off to a degree that we have never seen before.
7 of 9 is successful in disabling Janeway's neural transceiver right before Janeway assassinates her in the actual simulation for acting weird and could be a German plant. The fact that, of course, like, it parallels everything we've seen with Janeway not being particularly trusting of 7 of 9. You know, the characters didn't trust each other in this simulation, which was neat. And they have to do the cool guy running away from the exploding building trope as the Americans blow up Nazi headquarters. It's
artillery strikes.
It's a big old green screen explosion. Classic 90s CGI. But because all of the safeties are super duper off, that means it's a real explosion that really tears a giant hole in the holodeck going 3 decks high. And so it's a neat effect because we see this hole in the holomatrix and we see the decks like individually, like halls, and we can see how tall the holodeck is. And yeah, like it's interpreted by the holodeck characters as being a quote unquote secret Nazi bunker. So like the tease for the next episode is that the American GIs are gonna invade Voyager with their M1 Garens to try and take them down some Nazi aliens.
This is one of the coolest things I've seen in Star Trek. The damage to the outer holodeck wall and the hull breach, not hull breach, but the wall breach into Voyager and being able to see an actual cross section. I'm curious if, and we've counted before, like I don't think the holodeck can be more than 2 stories tops. So them having 4 stories exposed here, this has to be due to the augmentations that Carr has been pushing on the engineering team to expand the borders of the holodeck. But it's just fucking cool. And like the idea of a bunch of holodeck characters spilling out into the hallways where all of these holo emitters have been installed now and going ape shit in a holographic fueled like AI apocalypse is really fucking cool. It's something I've been looking forward. I didn't know this was going to happen, but something we've talked about before. We just talking about, but you know, the Doctor could just walk around in T-1000 knife hand people. You could have had hologram security all over the place, and that's what you're about to have. World War II American soldiers with rifles gunning down dudes in the hallway. I'm pumped.
Oh, it's gonna get real interesting. They did tease, of course, also that there's a Klingon simulation where Neelix got transferred over to after his French baker kind of got wasted in the street, and he's leading his band of Klingons. So if you think that there's more to come on here, you would be right. This is gonna get real weird real fast. But that's where they leave it. It's a good episode. I'm sorry you didn't enjoy it as much as I did. I fucking loved it. I loved the World War II shit. I loved how detailed it was. I loved the way that they played the characters as the characters they generally play, but a little different. I I enjoyed the premise tremendously, and it's just wacky as fuck, but still like good Star Trek, fun Star Trek.
Lots to like in this episode, and the Hirogen, which have been by and large, I think, a disappointment. You know, you get you get one or two good actors in there, and I think it really start pulling a bad villain species out of the gutter, and that's what I think we got going on here with Carr in this episode. So fun stuff.
And remember, everybody, if you're gonna LARP, be the immersion guy. Don't be the power gamer guy. No one likes the power gamer guy. No one likes that, the one that just wants to start combat all the time. Like you think you're cool, like wasting people and having a good time. Maybe having like a coterie of ne'er-do-well friends,
hypocritical shit is coming out of your mouth right now. You big...
Be a sensitive role player that wants to get that immersion. That's clearly where the real fucking LARP action's at. Trust me. I know these things.
All right, man. From here, obviously, we're going to be going into... Where's my little picture? Season 4, Episode 19, The Killing Game Part 2. We've got Klingon Neelix and the Doctor standing in Planet Hell. Janeway and the crew must retake Voyager from the Hirogens. Well, duh.
Well, yes. I mean, for once, they didn't blow it for you. How about that, huh? They didn't blow it for you.
Yeah. I'm curious to see where they go with technology I've always wanted to see.
Yeah, I think they set up really nicely the thing that I knew you would appreciate about the episode, which is holodeck shit gone mad, but at the same time explaining why it can't always happen, i.e. like the ship has been basically technologically stripped to allow this to occur, and therefore this will be wackiness that occurs one time only. It's perfect. And we will enjoy that wackiness with you next week. See you then.